did all
last
that.
week or so. My dad died.
All right, I got it.
So I had to come back, and we were down in Florida for 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
A few weeks.
No, you were in the part of Florida that got 8 inches of snow? Or the part of
Hey,
No,
we're government employees. We know
we're
what's going
Southwest
on.
Florida, so it's good. Yeah, it's nice.
Whatever I wanted on TV.
Yeah.
I just did.
T-shirts morning.
has it been chillier than normal even south? Or?
Yeah, I mean, some mornings I'll start off with
No
sweatshirt.
microphone?
As opposed to.
Lap, and I'll take that off.
Did you get the buyout?
Every day I'm in shorts.
Yeah.
I didn't. I got the two.
3 of my brothers are down south.
I mean,
But I
but
didn't
in
get the
comparison
buyout
to you,
either.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's cold, but by cold, you need a
Oh,
fleece.
okay, so not everybody.
Right?
All right.
So,
My coworker
You
did
know,
not.
I've been outside in the last week, 4 to 7 days,
But then OPM posted it.
especially the beginning of last week where it was just really cold. I enjoyed it.
No,
I was
no,
out with
I
my
did.
chainsaw, cutting,
I
was
did.
dressed for
Both did
it,
immediately.
skidding logs, and
as long as you're dressed appropriately, you know.
Was your dad a planned thing, or was it
and then he fell,
I know,
busted his
I know, but your family's all right.
leg. He went into the hospital and then things went downhill fast.
Yeah.
Nursing homes,
Well, and that's,
the way nursing homes worked for my dad is if you're a troublemaker, my dad wanted to get out of there. They'll try to shut you out. And
yeah,
so
I'm
he
gonna stick
couldn't
with it.
complain about
I'm
things
along for the
like.
ride.
where was he?
He worked Kennebunk. Yeah, Kennebunk.
Oh, because they have,
So, you know, he had an infection get really bad, urinary tract infection.
college?
That makes you hallucinate. And then my brother was in there. I was in Florida, and I said, "Man, he sounds whack, man. You gotta call a nurse." And he had messed his pants. And they were like, "Oh my God, his heart rate's really low. We're gonna."
Thought Rebecca might be here.
So they sent him to the emergency room. A couple days, 3 days later, he's dead.
Building is
Last
right
night,
next, right near mine.
my mom and I both spent the entire night in the hospital. And the next morning, he died.
So clearly,
So, you know, he didn't suffer for very long.
it's just gonna be cider and that's it. I can't do anything else.
Test, test.
There we go.
Someone press the button.
That's okay. Can everyone hear me now? Awesome. Good evening and welcome to 2025. The comprehensive plan continues. Thank you all for coming, in person or via Zoom. I know I sent that link out pretty late. Sorry about that. It's an informal meeting today, no formal presentation. We're going to be going over the strategy that we're starting now for the public engagement portion of the comp plan. If you're in the room, you got a copy of the draft survey. If you're on Zoom, it's in that Google Drive link that was in the email with the Zoom link, so you should be able to follow along, but I'll pull it up on the screen also when we get there. I guess I should reintroduce myself in case anyone's watching this video 10 years from now. My name's Erin Moriarty. I'm the city planner for Sanford, and this is our 7th meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. So we had our communications coordinator pull together a little bit of a strategy here as far as how we're going to start pushing things out to the public. She is unfortunately leaving the city, so we will be, we are currently actively hiring for that role. So if you know anyone that is very skilled in digital communications and design, that would be helpful. The job description is posted, but essentially we will be taking over those activities, which will be pushing out the survey, which we'll go over, and then I'm going to start off actually with the mapping exercise. So there's an image in here in the folder that kind of shows an example of what the mapping exercise will look like. This will be live on sanfordconnects.com. And people will be able to kind of pan around on the map, zoom in, zoom out. I think there's different options for base map, so you can kind of see if there's an aerial or not, and then be able to identify areas on the map that align with, oops, sorry, Wrong way. Green areas are where growth should be encouraged. Red areas are where growth should be restricted or avoided. Yellow are where there's infrastructure needs to be improved. So that could be roads, utility, public transit. And then blue areas are where the key community features are. Those are probably things that we kind of know, but it might be interesting just to see who we hear from and what they're currently utilizing as their community amenities. So that is one activity. We'll go back to the map if you want to see that again. So essentially you can drop a pin that looks like this. You can pan around. This is just a screenshot, but you can pan around, drop a pin, select one of those colors from the pin, and then kind of leave your comment. And if you have a picture too, so let's say you live in a neighborhood and there's this awful piece of sidewalk where the tree is growing up, you can take a picture of that outside and submit it and say, like, this infrastructure needs to be improved. So that's just one example. It could be a great thing too. It could be like, this playground is amazing, thank you so much, and have a picture of the playground with your kids on it or whatever. So then we plant trees appropriately, and we plan for their replacement in an appropriate span of time. That is true, Steve. Thanks for that input. So that is the mapping exercise. Any questions on that? Yes, Michelle?
Are we doing it tonight?
We're not doing this one tonight. I just wanted to show you all before we pushed it out so that you had an understanding of what it is, and then I'll send you all the link, and you can forward that on to people that you know and tell them all about Sanford Connect. So we're basically building up that portion of the website. It's kind of like a third-party website that is linked to our normal sanfordmaine.org, but it's geared towards engagement.
How long is the mapping exercise going to be open for?
Yeah, usually I would keep something like this and the survey open for at least 6 weeks. And that gives it enough time for people to kind of hear about it a couple times before they actually log in and do it. Yes?
Is there a how-to video available so that people who want to engage with it, they can watch the video first to get some training?
That is a good idea. I'm not sure. There might be one that Sanford Connects just has because this is one of their standard activities, but I'll make a note of that and see if it's either a video or just kind of like a little PDF tutorial, click here, click here.
And I'll help you with that if you need.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks.
Before we run over to the Zoom, maybe I missed this. What is the exercise going to be used for? And the reason I ask that is I'm wondering, is there an opportunity to promote this mapping exercise, like get more people interested, like when they're paying their tax bill or any time that they're interacting with city employees? Does that make sense? You said 6 weeks, and our bills are due in March, so I'm thinking that's not gonna work. So I didn't know what the purpose of the mapping exercise was.
Yeah, so a lot of times I do this with just 2 colors, red and green, like we want to promote growth here and we want to not promote growth here. Jordan, our communications had looked at other examples and saw the infrastructure and the kind of amenities, and I agree with those also. So I think it's just kind of giving us a sense of what the people that are participating, who are general community members, whether that's residents or just people who work here, come by, anyone willing to participate, basically. This is not like statistically accurate data that we're collecting here. It's all qualitative data and just kind of trying to get a sense of what people think.
Is it going to be is it going to be used for the final plan? I guess that's, like, what are we, the survey I get.
Yep.
But what is this going to be used for?
So it'll be in the final plan as an activity that engages the public. It doesn't necessarily need to directly translate to exactly where we draw a new zone boundary. But we'll take it under consideration as we get to that step and kind of evaluate, well, this area is rural residential, which doesn't really promote growth, but everyone said, put growth here. So maybe that's an area where we should kind of talk about either expanding the RD zone or coming up with a new zone.
All right, and then, so it won't affect the survey questions that you're planning?
2 separate activities. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
I
Sorry
think-
about that online.
Do you think we'll actually learn what people want to preserve, like, and things that we don't know that they want to preserve? That's what I'm kind of thinking, too.
It depends. You get different users for this kind of exercise. Some people have never looked at a map before. They just plug in where they're going on their directions, and they follow the directions. They don't ever actually look at maps. I look at maps all day. So you get different people. But, the people that attend all of our council meetings are very familiar with different neighborhoods, and I'm sure they'll get, and you can give multiple points. You don't just get one pinpoint that you can drop. Yes, Renee?
Oh, so I'm sorry if you already explained this and I missed it, but so this is an activity for the public. Is it supposed to be like, is it focused on smaller things? I know you said something like if a sidewalk is cracked or something, or like, is it focusing on like, I want to put a specific building here, or I want this specific piece of sidewalk to be fixed? Or is it more of a broad thing where it's like, I think that we should plan a development here, or I think we should modify the zoning or something like that?
It can be either one. I don't know that we'll get anyone that says specifically we should change the zoning here, but you can kind of see, well, you can't see it right now, but on the screenshot, Ben, like you can zoom in and out, but the pinpoint will get specific if you zoom in far enough. So you could say, like maybe zoom in on, let's just say Stenton Mill, and say, I want to see apartments here. Like, congratulations. We all want to see that. We're working on it, But that's just an example. Or someone might be at this kind of level and just say, maybe they put it over number 1 pond, or maybe they put it over like the roundabout and just say like fix traffic. So it can be.
So,
Yep.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Renee.
Oh, sorry, my mom's talking right now. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's more just like, it's a general thing of like, basically anyone can like give their ideas for how they like, what they want to do with what they want the city to do in terms of economic, like in terms of like development. Is that what I'm getting?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully it'll be some areas where they want to see more development, and then other areas where they like it how it is. They don't want to see anything. Or in the case of the infrastructure, it might be, the neighborhood is already developed. It's not really going to change, but it needs some help in just maintaining, basically.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're
That
welcome.
explains it.
Any other questions on the map? Yes, Bonnie?
Just one quick one. So how are we going to get it out to the public? Is it going out in like the Sanford Springville News?
Yep, so we can take out an ad. I could probably also just get an article in there. I know Jack McAdam is on this committee. I don't think he's here tonight. He might still be in Mexico. Maybe he stayed.
He's here. He's online.
Jack is there? I don't see Jack. Okay, anyways. He's been writing articles for the Sanford Springville News. I think Zendel's on there too. So we'll get it out in multiple ways. We can promote it by paid promotion, or we can also have people write articles. Either way is fine. But then also I'll be sending it to you all, and hopefully you will forward it on.
Can you put it like on the Sanford homepage, like our city homepage?
Yes, so that's part of the Sanford Connects. It'll be, once we update that kind of like third party and get everything up there, then we're going to really promote that on the Sanford homepage to say like, the comprehensive plan is like, come over here, and it would be a live link and bring them right to it. Yep. Hopefully we can do that because Jordan's leaving, so I guess I'll be doing that.
Here for a while. So this is the same process we used for the Safe Streets for All process. There was a mapping, very same mapping software that we used in there. We gleaned a significant amount of public comments. They could put a pin on the map and say, I don't feel safe here at this intersection. This road's terrible. I feel safe here. So all of the communication points that were mentioned earlier, as far as Sanford Springville News, social media context, and the other mechanisms, making it readily visible on the city's website, such as that, Facebook, all of those mechanisms were used, and we gleaned a lot of information out of that. So,
Do you think it's okay to put it on the happening?
oh, it gets there whether you
Okay, I just want to make
on
sure.
or not. So
All right. Okay.
You all can
Free
post
press.
it on Facebook.
I don't have Facebook,
Absolutely.
that's why
Okay,
I'm-
whatever you got, Have your neighbor post it on Facebook. That's great. Yeah.
Aaron, I know you're showing screenshots. Is this already active like today? Is this something people could do like either tonight or even
It's not yet.
Oh, it's not
We
active
wanted to
yet.
kind of like run it by you all first.
Okay,
See
all
if
right.
there's any major,
When do you expect it will go live?
potentially we could do it tomorrow. I don't know that we'll have all the advertisements ready, but we could kind of turn it on Sanford Connects, if everyone here feels like that. Okay, great. All right, before we get to the survey, there's another item on the public engagement strategy where we've been talking about what we want to call this plan to the public, that I would appreciate some feedback on. We have a couple different ideas. It's going to be on the screen. They are here. So I've worked with a lot of communities in the past. The envision/community is a very common one, but it can be a nice, quick, just like kind of a logo. We'll make a logo for whatever it is, but basically trying to advertise to the people, would you like it to just say the Sanford Comprehensive Plan of 2025, or do you want it to have a little bit more of like a catchy Shaping Sanford, Sanford's Blueprint, Envision Sanford?
I like the second bullet, short, and sends a clear message.
Doing that, sorry. Yes, Michelle?
Is Springville part of it?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because you'll see on the first question of the survey that I also was struggling with the Springville question.
Gonna
Technically,
get rid of us? Is that what you're saying?
technically speaking, Springville is a part of Sanford. Personally, as someone that didn't grow up here, I think it's extremely strange that we have two different communities listed in our community logo. I'll go out and say that right away, but I know people are very attached to Springville being its own separate place. I live in a similar situation right now, so I understand that, but like, for instance, I live in Ocean Park neighborhood of Old Orchard Beach, but the Old Orchard Beach logo does not say Ocean Park. It's a historic neighborhood that has been consumed by the larger city.
But we are a village in Sanford, and I'm sure there are going to, more than just me, who would want to have Sanford Springville listed. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, no, I'd like to hear from more people, because I'm not from here, so
I like the first two that have the date in them. I think that just helps people kind of see how far out this goes. You know, I get where Mike's saying the shorter one might be easier. The first one, what I like about it is if you look back at, I think, the prior comprehensive plans, I think they were just called comprehensive plans. So historically, you could say, how does this compare to those others?
Sure.
But I'm not hell-bent on either one.
On any of these kind of cutesy, shorter names that maybe catch people's attention more, there's always a little subline that says the comprehensive plan for Sanford or something along those lines that spells it out.
I know, and as far as the Sanford Springville question, I'll answer that.
Yeah, please.
I know it's hard to understand from being away. However, it is critical for acceptance of most things in this community to recognize the unique nature of the other half of our community. And we find that it goes a long way to assisting with buy-in on any project we're doing, that people feel that they're included from the Springville area, and you know, and that it makes them feel more part of the Sanford community to be mentioned and named and recognized. And it's just something I've accepted over the years. I tease people about it from Springville all the time. I have one of my best friends is from Springville, but I recognize the attachment and the importance of them being mentioned as part of the overall whole, even though they're not technically the legal entity.
Right.
So
And
I would encourage you to do the Sanford Springville thing, even though it's annoying.
And we've kind of moved in the other direction with the fire departments, have we not, in that whole process, not calling it the Springville?
Isn't it Springville Fire Department at the bottom of the hill?
Well, I hate to break it to you.
Station.
Yeah, I get that piece of it, yeah.
Is that what we're calling it in the future?
So it'd be the Springville District Station.
It will be. Oh, okay. I thought that there was something else in the works. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Lenny.
I'm just wondering, by putting 2045 in there, are you going to open up a line of questions about
Are you setting an expectation of a timeline or something, or do you want that in there?
So comp plan is generally accepted for 20 years. We could change that to 2025 and just make it the date that it's being published. That's what our current comprehensive plan is labeled as. And then if we finish everything in 20 years, great, we'll have another one. And if we finish it earlier than that, we can have another one. Do you know what I mean? So those were what Jordan came up with. I would probably lean closer to the 2025. And then we're committed to finishing it this year as well.
Well, most people not in this room probably won't understand what the 20-year timeline is. For
Right.
Yeah, I like
Yep.
the 2025.
It's okay.
Most people don't understand what a comprehensive plan is. That's why we're trying to get creative with the name of it.
Agreed.
Because if we advertise, we're seeking input on a comprehensive plan, people are
right.
just going to move on to tomorrow's news. So that's why we're trying to get creative with a name to get people interested in it,
Yeah.
getting past the comprehensive plan that nobody understands truly what that means.
What would you call it?
Well, I'm
Future?
holding my comments looking for the general public, so.
Okay.
So there was the one, if you, Aaron, if you could put that back up, if there was the one that said something about our future,
Right.
you know, what if you just did our future, but added the
Somehow
date and then the
2025.
subtitle that said, you know, comprehensive plan?
Building for our future. or-
Yes. What is it? Yeah.
So people get excited when you give them teeth in the game of shaping tomorrow's Sanford. Everybody complains about where Sanford's been, where we are, and feels they have the right answers to shape us for tomorrow. This is giving people the opportunity to give their input to help us get to tomorrow.
I'm going to second that idea, actually. I like that. I mean, we've been more and more using kind of citywide that logo that includes the tagline, "Your future is here," and that kind of speaks to that same sort of message that we're thinking forward, we're thinking about a future that, you know, and what that's going to be like. So seems consistent. I like that.
How about, I mean, I was just thinking as I look at all of them, Sanford Springfield 2025, a blueprint for our future. Or is that too long?
No, that's not too long. It could be, you know, underneath a blueprint for our future.
I like the our future though, because for the same reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep this in.
And blueprint gets to the planning and the zoning as well as mapping and such. But I know Renee has her hand up, so I don't.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Renee, go ahead.
I agree with the thing where I like the ones that like very explicitly say like our future and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily because I don't think people could figure out what a comprehensive plan is, because I think it probably, if they thought about it, they probably could figure out, even though I think it might be a little vague for people that are not, you know, really into local politics. But I kind of think that more so rather than the understandability of it, I think the important thing is because when you hear comprehensive plan, what you probably think about is city council meetings and like, you know, meetings like this. And most people, and you know, I love being here, but most people are like, don't find it very interesting, and then they'll kind of zone out. So I think what you need to do is you need to kind of put it as not so much like, not so much like a like bureaucratic thing, but as more of a imaginative, like kind of like like an ideal, like, you know, I being idealistic for like the future kind of thing. So I do really like the explicitly saying that, you know, 2045, and something like, you know, something that kind of generates some sort of hope, like you know, tomorrow or future or like something like that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Renee. I think next is
problem.
Lee. Is that right?
Yes, I like the last two because I feel like the language, they're shorter, and I feel like the language is a little more accessible to people, and I think that helps in getting people engaged.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. I think next is Mark. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just think we would be remiss if we don't include Springvale in whatever messaging we're doing. I think that's really important, again, from the buy-in, just like other members of the committee have stated this evening.
sounds good. Yeah, it sounds like there's a possibility of kind of annoying people or if we don't include it, but there's no possibility of annoying people if we do. So, except for me, I guess. Okay, Zendel?
I'd like to just voice my support for shaping, because shaping is an active word, whereas some of the other ones like envision, that's more a passive thing. I think with shaping, you let people immediately know this is something you can do, this is something you can participate in. And I also agree we should include Springvale in there.
Okay, great. Lots of votes across the board, so I guess we'll, anyone else? Comments?
I think 2045 creates urgency. I think someone who sees that says, oh, maybe I ought to take a look at this. And they're making a considerable effort here to plan out the next 20 years. Maybe I should read this.
Comments, Dave? No?
Oh, no. I like putting the date it was made on there. I don't disagree with you. Because I think kind of labels it. When it gets away from you, you realize how long it's been. Any master plan that I've ever been involved in always has the date that it was made, not the date that it's supposed to be good towards. I know comprehensive plans are different than a master plan. A master plan, you should be updating every 5 years, completely redoing in 20 years. You do the same thing?
We could do the same thing here. Yeah, there's going to be action points and stuff, so if we get those done, then we can kind of move others up the list.
So if you put the date it was done, you know in 2030 it's time to do an update. Otherwise, I think that might get lost. But I like the idea of an action word in there, like Zendel said, and putting future in there. And Sanford and Springvale, I'm a Springvale guy, Springvale kid from way back. And I also like kidding people about this, but it's a lot more than a neighborhood. It has its own zip code. It actually almost was a different municipality. That never happened. And I guess the thing that annoys me the most about the Sanford-Springvale thing is that it does become contentious on both sides. When I think it's a valuable asset of Sanford. I think it should be embraced, Sanford and Springvale. It's wonderful that we have two downtowns that are very different. And that gets lost in it because it does get contentious. And I think that's too bad.
Yep.
So I think it is an asset.
Okay, right now I have written down Shaping Sanford Springvale 2025, a blueprint for our future.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Steve, can you get behind that? Shaping Sanford Springvale 2025, a blueprint for our future.
And listening to the 2025 versus the 2045, I think if you're going to use the word future, you've got to have a future date in there. I have a problem with 2025 and using the word future. 25 is already here.
I guess I get a little confused because the comprehensive plan has long, medium, and short-term goals. And using 2045 seems like it's only pointing towards the long term.
So could you put the range? I know we're making it longer again, but,
You need a date?
well, I mean, on any major report, you know, the date goes on it, even if it's in fine print at the bottom, right? So you know when it was written.
Right.
It would.
So,
yeah.
you know, so you have the 2025 would be at the base of it somewhere in the fine print, in the footer. And then, you know, if you're, again, I think it's good to kind of know where you're going to or how long it's supposed to span. But again, the name, you know, before you know it, you got a paragraph and nobody's going to read the damn thing.
But if you don't need the date, you could put blueprint for the next 20 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do use that tagline frequently in comp plans.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I'll work on it. Sounds like we're in the general vicinity of something catchy. So appreciate that feedback. We're going to go to the survey now. So in general, I have this kind of laid out in a fashion where we would be able to potentially print these and leave them around City Hall and the library, but there's also a digital format. It'll probably look a little bit different, but same questions. So I'm open to all feedback. I tried to incorporate everyone's comments from earlier in the process, but if I missed anything, feel free to let me know as we go through it. The idea is that we don't want to make it too long because then people will kind of quit halfway. But we want to get enough information that we don't need to do a second survey. Yes, Michelle, I think, or Mike.
Well, I'm just thinking, when you're printing it, are you gonna print them like it's a fold-out thing?
I can
Like
print
it's-
it that way.
Yeah, so that when, one page doesn't get lost from the other.
Right,
Okay,
yep.
cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll write that down. Michael, anything?
So I love the trails in Sanford. I don't use them.
We're going to go through it as we go.
Question by question?
Yeah, if
Oh,
you don't
okay.
mind.
All right.
Because I don't want to get too confused and miss things. So the first kind of section here is just to get a general base to find out if people are living here and or working here, and then also kind of their plans for the future. So all of these questions at the end of the survey will be able to cross-tabulate. So for instance, if someone's super negative about everything as they go through, but they also say they're definitely not going to be here in 10 years, I kind of care less about what they're talking about. It's good information, but I care less. As someone that says, yes, I live here, yes, I want to be here, and I think the trails need more work, yeah, that person's comment probably rises up a little bit. So it's just different ways to help us prioritize as we hear. Because again, it's not statistically accurate. You know, there are firms that do that, do telephone surveys, do polling. This is just going to be kind of word of mouth as we advertise, but we don't know if we're getting like a true sample of the population. Question, Bonnie?
Yeah, so just on looking at the first two questions, so people that, anybody could go and fill this out, whether they live here or not, right?
Correct.
So what I don't see on that first page is the people maybe that work in Sanford but don't live here. What about, do you plan on living here? If you don't live here, do you plan on living here? Or would you like to live here?
Oh,
Yep, we could add that in, not just a do you plan to stay, but do you plan to,
Move to Sanford? I don't know, and maybe it's
that's a
just
really good point.
a
And-
sub-question.
And if you don't, why not?
Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's a good one. Are there any extra printed ones?
You can have this.
Yeah,
I'll share with you.
Bonnie, I really like that input, because if we just take people that, yes, I'm planning to move here, then you look at what they like and dislike,
Yeah.
really helps us identify why they want to move here, right?
Right.
I think that's a great catch.
Because they may work here and then they just, I don't know, for whatever reason haven't moved here, whether it's affordability or lack of
Well, that's-
housing
right.
or whatever, right?
Right.
Yep, it's great.
Parking, that's probably why. Sorry, I had to throw that out.
The next three are very qualitative. We try to guide the discussion a little bit as far as what's your favorite thing. Sometimes that's just another open-ended. The way that the describe Sanford in 3 words is fun is that at the end we can make like a little word cloud and see if anything pops out as what people really think of Sanford. Any comments on these topics, or kind of, this is like the warm-up exercise? Zendel, go ahead.
Yeah, on number 4, it makes it sound like you can only pick one thing. Is there a way to make it so that you can choose multiple things, or that you can rank them in order of how much you like them, or something like that?
There's a way to do all of those. Anyone have strong opinions on what we want to do?
I'd love to see top 3.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Choose your top 3. Okay.
And it might be, if you do the top 3, can you make other 3, I mean, there's possibility that people want to fill in 3 others.
3 others.
Yeah.
Okay, choose top 3.
Michelle.
Michelle likes a 50-question survey, I can tell.
Maybe incentivize me.
Yeah, let's go. Let me go back to the survey thing. All right, the next section
Renee, looks like
is,
Renee has
oh, sorry, Renee, go ahead.
So I guess maybe when you're talking about like what if people want to do like 3 others, could you just like give like, instead of, I'm assuming you'd want them to like circle the stuff, instead of having them like circle the stuff, you just have some like options and then they have to like write out which ones they want.
Yep, that's possible. That's a good idea.
And, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, I guess, you don't have to do this because technically if they wanted, people could just write it in the other thing. But I feel like maybe writing like the people or the community might be a good thing because I feel like a lot of people would like say that too because, people are what makes a community.
Yep, that is a good suggestion. Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Yes, Michelle.
Which downtown?
Would you like Springvale to be a separate option?
I just,
No.
it's just gonna be assumed, but it's gonna be assumed that it's Sanford downtown, and there may be people who go to the meeting grounds and go, oh my God, Springvale downtown is so happy.
Yeah, but it just says downtown, so I think
Yeah.
it could be,
You won't, but when you get the results, you don't know if it's Springvale or if it's Sanford. Anyways,
I think that, so Springvale's basically about 3,400 people out of 21,000. So it's roughly 15% of the town's population. It's got its own zip code,
We
just
do.
like West Kennebunk does.
we do.
It's got its own zip code, just like Moody Beach does in Wells. They're very much part of Wells, very much part of Kennebunk. I grew up in Sanford, spent most of my adolescence in Springvale, actually. And so I have a soft spot in my heart. It was in Springvale today, actually recording for a YouTube video to promote the town. And, if you read Wikipedia, which I did today on Springvale, in 2010 or when 13, if you read the Wikipedia page, I believe they stopped recognizing it as a separate entity because when we became a city, it was absorbed by the town of Sanford, much like Moody Beach, much like West Kennebunk.
Well, Wikipedia is, just remember, Wikipedia is controlled by the people who edit it.
Right.
So, let's be very careful. I think it is important, and I know this is a pain, to recognize Sanford in the questions that we do. Keeping in mind, because it is about buy-in, Mike, I know what you're saying, and it is a lot about buy-in, and it is a lot about the fact that I think Springvale is a valuable part of our community. It houses a lot of our farmland, and we need to take that into consideration as we write this question. So, like, I wouldn't separate the downtowns. I'd make it a positive. We have 2 downtowns. That's one great thing about our community.
Two downtowns.
I think everybody would agree with that. So instead of just saying downtown, 2 downtowns. That's the
yes.
great thing about our community.
Yes.
So, where you can make slight edits like that to recognize the Sanford Springvale,
Yes.
I think that's a good thing to do. And it's positive. And I know what you're saying, Mike. I get what you're saying.
Good. I said
But
my piece.
it's something that I've just come to say, to heck with it, just embrace the fact that Springvale is a unique part of the community and they want to be loud and proud about that. And I think they're willing to be part of Sanford if we're loud and proud about the village.
On that bullet E, where it says downtown, instead of adding yet one more bullet, could you just, downtowns and
Yeah.
put
2
them both?
downtowns, yeah.
And then
I-
if it's written, they could circle it, and if they have a preference for one over the other, they could circle that.
Right, exactly. This whole section is just kind of getting people
Yeah.
warmed
Well,
up.
what's funny, and I tell this to people a lot of times, is sadly Springvale was the most destroyed downtown, and it doesn't it has more problematic downtown aspects than Sanford does. Sanford kept some sort of a walkability aspect, and Springvale lost that by setting everything back, and you're not walking by shops. So it's great to have the 2 downtowns. They have unique characteristics. I think Sanford has a better chance of recovering into what you see as an old-fashioned downtown, but Springvale will always have good positive aspects as well. So it's great having 2 downtowns. It really is. I wish we had the 2 downtowns we used to have. I wish they hadn't been torn down. So.
Mark on Zoom?
Since everybody knows at this point that they're taking the survey for Springvale and Sanford, why do we have to call it out again in the question? Why not just say, what's your favorite thing about the community or our town or, Why name specific?
Yep, that's a good point.
Yep.
Okay. That's on Zoom? No? Steve, did you have?
Yeah, so I was listening to the conversation, Sanford, Springvale, and such, and I identify 3 downtowns. You got Springvale, downtown proper, you got South Sanford. Everybody forgets about South Sanford.
Agree.
I specifically identify South Sanford, and when you look at the current comprehensive plan, when you look at amenities, you have amenities in Springvale, you have amenities in Sanford. South Sanford's a forgotten child. They don't have the amenities, they don't have the parks and the other features that the rest of the community has. So I recognize three very distinct pieces, and internally we talk about Springvale, that's the village proper, you got the Sanford downtown proper, and you got South Sanford, that's where our largest amount of growth is happening. So this is all reminiscent of, years ago we were talking about, we wanted to have signage, welcome to Sanford, then have the district signs that direct you into a district, and then once you're inside of the district, direct you to the amenities that are there. And we're kind of like, oh, we will fail to try to put names to all of these varying districts, right? The historic mill district, because names are names and colors, right?
But that's interesting that you state that, because my sister lives in Boston, she lives in Bay Village, and they own it. We are Bay Village. They have a better community organization, they have better neighborhood activities, they know their neighbors better than we do around here a lot of times. So I think the naming of the neighborhoods has been a great aspect of what Matt's been trying to do.
It's an identity.
Right, it's an identity. You have West Side Village, you have the East Side, because when I owned the store in the East Side, they were proud of their neighborhood. I mean, people look at them and like, oh, it's the East Side, it's, all the drugs and stuff, but no, it's a very proud community of people who work very hard. And I think that as we're growing this community, recognizing that is important. However, South Sanford, really? It's not really that distinctive. It would be nice to make it distinctive, but I don't think we need to mention it like that.
Well, Shane's is in South Sanford, right?
Yeah.
River Junction Brewing, I do think that there is a opportunity, especially with people coming off of 95, South Sanford is like where they go. Wasn't that where I'm assuming that's where the amusement park was supposed to be. So I think that that's an opportunity. The cluster, it doesn't have its own zip code, but I do think that it is an opportunity, and if we're thinking about the next 20 years, that might be.
I would say growth of parks, as we're talking about the comp plan, growth of parks in that section is going to be critical.
So
I think we're going to have an opportunity in the future to be a little bit more specific about Springvale, Eastside Neighborhood, Eastside Acres, whatever it's called, South Sanford.
The East Side.
The
It's
East
just
Side.
put the word in front, the
East.
East Side,
Oh,
because
please.
it's a little rough around the edges.
Okay. That'll be at a later date when we have more of like a functional strategy for that neighborhood. So I think right now the survey is going to be a little bit more broad all over Sanford and let people kind of interpret it as they will. I don't want to make them think too hard, because I do want them to actually answer most, if not all, of the questions. Okay, so let's move on to the housing. There were several suggestions that came from the committee that I did not take on this section. And that is because it's usually people's tendency to ask, what kind of house do you want? What kind of housing should we build in Sanford? But the city's not in the market of building housing. And generally speaking, we already have too much of one type of housing, and that's what people will say they want more of. And I don't think that is fiscally responsible. So that being single-family homes. Yes.
I don't understand this section. So if many of the people who live in Sanford, I don't know how I would answer the survey, because I already live here, I already have a house. So do I say yes to the first question, that my preferred housing is available?
If you like the house that you live in, I would say yes to that.
I think this question could be reworded. I don't know how, but it confused me. If you live in Sanford, are you looking to move? That's, maybe this
What
is
if
an
you
optional
sold a
question?
house and you were in an apartment though, but like your dream is a farm, right? So like your preferred housing is a farm, but you can't afford a farm right now because it costs $1 million and.
So
What are you gonna do with that data, though,
That's
I
what I'm like,
guess.
what is-
Yeah,
what's
so
the-
what's the purpose of the question? You don't want to know what type of housing.
Say that again, Steve?
Around the diversification of our housing stock?
We are after a diversification of housing stock, yes. Yeah, there's potentially either rewording or some added question here about what you would like to see more of, but again,
Unless you start listing townhouses, versus
Yeah.
a single-family detached, unless you start listing what you're trying to get people, to trigger people's thought process.
Is it possible to say, what type of housing do you live in right now? Are you looking to change your housing in the near future? If yes, what is your preferred? I feel like there's a step missing. So I live in a single family house now. I'm all good. I don't go to the next question. But if I live in an apartment and I really would love to live in a house in Sanford, there could be like a two-step.
okay.
I don't know if you're planning
I
on
can
using like
combine 7 and 8 and make it that.
yeah, Survey Monkey or something where it's like, if then kind of.
At that point, you might be able to say, single-family with yard, townhouse, condo, you might actually, or apartment, you might actually be able to draw out a little of what you're looking for in diversification of housing and, yeah. If you give them choices.
Yep, so a list of options and say now and in the future.
So as I think about how I would sort this data, you live in Sanford Springville? No. Do you work here? Yes. Is the preferred housing type available in Sanford? No.
Okay, so the jump.
Maybe that's why you live here, you work here, but you don't live here because your housing's not available. That's how I think about sorting all of these things out, but.
It's like leading like they're gonna read it differently. You kind of have to lead them while you're asking that question. This lead in, I think that's what we're saying. So people understand why you're asking the question, what you're looking for.
Matt on Zoom?
Is there anything on there about like new housing opportunities? I know there's limited amounts, but that also internally might have a lure for like a longtime resident who's looking for a new place.
New housing, are you talking about a certain type of housing or just new?
Just new.
Okay. So that would be more on number 9, I think.
I think we're kind of falling into the rabbit hole I was afraid of. So a survey, if you make it 10 pages long,
Yeah.
people look at it, they say it's too long,
Right.
we bypass it. So we, as this group, kind of knows this whole process, kind of knows what we're here for. The hard part is making a survey that gets information that we need, basic information we need, without making it so long that somebody looks at it and refuses to answer the first question because it's 5 pages long. So as we're talking about these questions, we have to be thinking about is if we keep getting every question more and more detail, it's going to get to the point where the majority of the public looks at this and won't take it because it's going to waste too much of their precious time.
Right, so but like on 7, could be an opportunity where you take a question away. If it's just a yes or, I guess again, it depends on what you're gonna do with how they answer that. If you're not doing anything with how they answer that question either way, then just take it out.
Yeah. I would take that. Of course, the housing you're looking for, if it's not available, you can build it. Buy the land. Modify a house, renovate. Of course
But it's, in real life, it's not that simple. So that's the problem, is, for instance, I move to town, I get a job for the municipality. I want a single-family house on 5 acres. In some cases, you can't find a 5-acre lot. Some cases, you can't find a house on 5 acres, so it's not possible. So then the question is, okay, am I going to settle and live in a condo or a townhouse or maybe an apartment for a few years? So really, as Sanford evolves into a city, we need more people to want to live in an apartment or a condo situation than on 5 acres of land because there's only so much land mass available. And we want to conserve the land mass we have for rural uses, not housing uses. So really, I'm looking at some of this data is simply, are we ready to evolve into a city like we're trying to do yet?
But I guess maybe this is getting back to we have 6 questions for parks, trails, and open space, and we have 3 for housing. So are parks, trails, and open space more important to the comprehensive plan? Or is housing?
Should we give some more room to housing and pull back a little on trails?
I started going through going, wait, we only have this, and then like 3 for infrastructure and services? Oh my gosh, I think we need more, right?
Yeah, the difference is that, again, the city doesn't build housing, but we
No, I
do
get
build
that.
parks and trails. So there is a little bit of, it is, I agree, a little leaning towards parks and trails, and if you can identify one that you want to cut, we can do that when we get to that section.
But remember, our zoning, the work we're going to do on our zoning
Yes.
is going to we're going to be led by what kind of housing people want.
Because if people don't want to be in apartments or in condos,
Then why would we?
That question does not guide you, though. I mean, if you're.
No, I'm not saying that question does, but improving the housing section does.
Yes, right, adding more questions to the housing.
That's what I mean.
advice.
Yeah.
Yep, so the kind of, one of the ideas behind number 8 is trying to identify people that are currently in single-family homes, whether it's a 5-lot or not, that are looking to downsize. And the last section that we haven't got to yet is demographics and people that are generally older and maybe living alone. If we can show that there's a certain percentage of people that are older and living alone and looking to downsize, then that leads to the thought that we need more apartments or senior living facilities. Yes.
So as I think about the housing, I absolutely agree that there needs to be more questions to get more information around housing. Economic development, workforce development, housing. That's the three big ones, right? We can't have any one of the 3 without all of them at once. So I can think of a multitude of examples. When I worked up north, ATX was growing. The biggest impediment, they said you never attract that highly technical workforce up into northern Maine. Yep. What was the biggest impediment? The lack of the type of housing that workforce wanted. So they were building 30-plus houses a year because the old aged housing stock that was there was not what those highly paid professionals wanted. So they started building their McMansions in new subdivisions that were opened up. Millinocket's going through the same thing with Arcatine. Oh, we get this big thing, this big whiz-bang things on the horizon. Yeah, hey, where are your people going to live? Have you thought about opening up a subdivision? Right? You can't. It's the 3 things you've got to have. So I'd like to have more information about people's wants, needs, and desires around housing.
I hear you. You're kind of saying exactly what I started off with, in that the people that are taking the survey live in the area, whether it's Sanford or the region. We're not going to be attracting those high-tech workers from Boston to take this survey. We can attract those people to Sanford. I already know what kind of housing those people want. The state has done plenty of studies that tells us what kind of housing those people want. I don't need to hear from the current residents what kind of housing people in Boston want to have if they move to Sanford.
So I'm just curious from a zoning, and I know you, Nell, you have your hand up. I'm just curious, following this line of thought, from a zoning perspective, what are the biggest concerns that you have from the current, like what isn't answered, or what questions are not in here that would help you to do or more, or what your developers that come in?
So it's hard. Right now, a lot of the we have 2 distinct groups of developers. We have developers that are looking to do large-scale apartment complexes. Large-scale meaning 90, 100-unit ones. Or we have single-family neighborhood subdevelopment. So we don't have a lot of diversity. We have basically 2 types of projects coming through right now. We have both ends of the spectrum. Essentially, our zoning ordinance is antiquated, but if you read the current comp plan, we've actually done a lot of what the comp plan says. If you read it front to back, we're actually in pretty good shape of what was predicted for us to do 20 years ago. So I would say on that front, our zoning has worked, because I'm not saying the comprehensive plan, every item has been checked, because it is not. But if you read it, a large percentage of what was in that comp plan from 20 years ago has been or either is currently in the works. So zoning for the future 20 years ago, I think, although I'm biting my tongue as I'm saying it because I feel our zoning ordinance needs major amendments. That said, it has worked for the most part. Where it goes 20 years from now is, I don't have the ability to rub my magic ball. That's where I'm not a strong person in trying to figure out where Sanford will be 20 years from now. I have where I want it to be 20 years from now, but I'm not trying to make this a staff level comprehensive plan. I'm seeking public input.
But are the questions that are being proposed going to get you?
I think the housing questions can be worked on
Okay.
to get better answers.
Okay.
We could have a question about what type of resident do we want to support with the future housing of Sanford, and not talk about the actual different types, but have people identify if they want to be able to support more senior citizens that want to stay in Sanford, or if we want to support more high-tech workers. And then we use the data that we already know that supports those different resident groups. Zendel first. Sorry, Lenny.
Yeah, I agree with the points made that some of these questions need to be more detailed, or we need to have more questions. But I also see Jamie's point that a long survey is going to scare people off. Does this all have to be in one survey, or is there a way that we could make, for example, 3 shorter surveys, a housing survey, an economic development survey, and then it would be more easily digestible for people and not so scary?
I appreciate that feedback. There's generally not a good way to do more than one survey because people will get confused. They'll say they already did the survey, and we'll get a lot of responses on the first one and not as many on the rest of them. We're already talking about how Parks, Trails, and Open Space has more questions than the other sections. Like if the Trails Committee wants to put out their own plan and their own survey, which has been in discussion, then we could slash half of these, or we could ask a question, hey, have you taken the Parks Committee or the Trails Committee survey yet? And link that at the end of the survey, and they can take that survey afterwards if they want to kind of take that on as their own entity. But having multiple surveys just generally doesn't work out, in my experience.
They were, just as a comment, because I'm on the Trails Committee, they were asked to provide questions, and they did quite a bit of work on this, so it'd be too bad if I pulled it back.
Right.
Well, there's
I
a
hear what you're
fairness
saying.
aspect here, though. It's like they took a whole page. So.
Well, I think they thought they had a whole page to do, so.
I would take off 14, 15, 19.
It's a quarter of the survey, right? The parks and also, I don't know.
I have no heartburn with taking off 14, 15, and 19. The third. I want to know about the future, not necessarily the current.
Don't include the background, right? 22 questions, 7 questions.
Yeah, I'd ask them, if you want to cut it back, see what information they're looking to get.
Just want to ask Aaron a quick question.
Yes, Lenny.
Would you prefer not to ask people what type of housing they want? I'm just asking, what the concern is, we're not asking them specifically what type of housing they would like to see.
The concern is that I don't want to have,
You
this is
afraid of
going to
baiting?
sound bad, I don't want to have data that supports something other than what I know is what Sanford needs and what the state has published as goals.
But you want to do the survey to know what people want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get, you might hear some answers you might not like, but you want to get people's opinion, right?
Yeah, but so a Mainer will give you an opinion that sprawls out development, eats up land, and that is poor development.
Possibly.
So that's I know exactly why she wants to seek out better urban, save the farm, save all the open space, and have people living in a little bit more density with more parks, and that's the better way to live. I mean, Yes, it is.
Kind of the whole
it is
point
a
of
far,
having a
it's a
comp
far
plan.
better way to live.
But you still have a drafting and an adoption and approval process that I think, we as a steering committee and the council has a chance to look at. So if the feedback comes back and it says that we need tons and tons of single-family homes in areas that have absolutely no infrastructure to support the growth, I think that's where staff and where leadership and, can come in and say, that is not a financially appropriate growth pattern for Sanford. I assume that the comp plan is going to identify geographically, this is a growth zone. We want growth in this zone. And those are going to be zones that will support growth. So I think if the feedback we're getting is suggesting that a growth zone ought to be somewhere where leadership says it's inappropriate to channel growth into that area, it couldn't support it, then we wouldn't finalize that and solidify it in a plan. So I'm not afraid of hearing feedback from the community that they're favoring a pattern that ultimately we know couldn't be part of the plan. Right. We just have to be able to communicate with the community that this is why that's not a high growth zone for us. We don't have any infrastructure there whatsoever to support that, and it would be financially a drain on the city's, resources to channel growth to that area.
You stated that a lot better than I could have.
Renee?
Hi. So I don't know if this would be too much of a oversimplification, but is there any reason why we couldn't just, instead of being like, what type of housing do you want and stuff like that, is there any reason we couldn't just be like, are you satisfied with your current housing situation? Yes or no? And then you could have a space of why or why not.
There you go. That's a fair way of doing it.
Yeah, I like that. Why not? Blank, fill in the blank.
I don't know if that would be too like vague but like it just seems like we don't want a ton of questions, but we also, we want to get a diverse array of responses. I mean, you could always put like another question targeted at like people that don't live here and like being like, are you satisfied with the houses available to the housing available if you would move here? Why not? It's just what I was thinking. I don't really know.
Yep, that's good feedback. More open-ended.
Should that also be, if you live in Sanford, are you satisfied? Because we, might get a lot of other answers from people who don't live here that ultimately,
Right.
if you're really happy with your housing situation in, Wells or Shapley or wherever, that's not really, well, good for you, but that's not really,
Lee?
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree. I think the trails is a little overweighted for the survey. I would maybe eliminate some of those initial questions. I especially like number 18. Number 18. But I agree that could be trimmed. And if you're going to have a option for additional questions, would that be like a separate tab or?
Yeah, that's a good point. Usually there's a section at the very end that I would say anything else that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I was going to
Just
ask
like
about that.
an option.
Yeah.
So I'll add that.
Just an open-ended, like, commenting.
Comment box.
Yep.
I think those are already live, actually, on the Sanford Connects, but we can add it like within this survey also. Mark?
I like the idea that you had earlier about maybe having a more comprehensive trails survey linked here. I think there is an opportunity to gather more data with people who are already engaged in the survey format. Still leave some trails parks questions on the form, but if the Trails Committee wants to have a link to a more comprehensive survey of their own, there certainly shouldn't be any harm in that.
Yeah, I agree.
I can add a form also at the end that allows people to add their email for future, because we're going to have probably other future communications ourselves, but then I'm happy to share that with the Trails Committee if people are willing to stay connected and give us their email. We have a pretty good listserv already, I think, at the city, but.
Just to tack on the end of that, I don't know if there's a way to engage the high school student population, but I mean, these are young people who potentially are looking to stay in their community where housing options are very limited. And it represents a big growth pool for us. So potentially either to target this survey in some way toward them or to have a survey for them might be something worthy of consideration.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
Yes, thanks, Lee. We're going to try and reach out at some sporting events and whatever else the school feels is an appropriate venue for us to be able to talk directly to students and try to get them surveys. I think Alex has some friends in the school system that are teachers and might be encouraging their students to take the survey as like a homework assignment even. So I'm hoping to get some of the younger feedback, yes. All right, now that we're on trails, I guess we can go back to the other ones later, but anyone, other comments? I feel like we could probably cut off 13, 14, 15 if those are less important than how you're using the trails and how they would be used in the future.
Yeah, the 14 and 15, I don't know if that's of much value to a comp plan.
Right.
How often you use it might give you the value of the answers you're getting. If somebody uses it a few times a year.
True.
What you use them for,
Off too, that when you do the general last question at the end of the survey, they can mention trails in there.
those are hard to quantify too, the fill in the blanks. I mean, we've talked a lot about those, but if you've been involved in surveys, it's nice to have the ones you can graph.
Yeah, I agree.
Tells you a lot. The fill in the blanks are a little harder. You gotta read through all 200 and whatever of them, which you can.
Well, initially I had a questionnaire that listed off reasons why someone might not use a park, and you said stay away from the negative ones in your feedback.
Yeah.
So I took
Yeah.
and made it open-ended.
You're gonna start
instead.
off on a positive, which
Right.
I don't see the opening question. The opening question that I thought we landed on was which park or trail is your favorite in Sanford, and to give them some choices. Be a little bit educational. You know, Rail Trail, Nelson Way North, so on and so on, some of the parks. But I don't know how much value of planning that would have.
Right,
so.
right. And someone may have already, if they're really a trail user, they may already have mentioned that in the first section where we're talking about, what are your favorite things about Sanford? Yes, Michelle.
I think 17 and 18 are very similar, so I think maybe just choosing one, and my preference would be 18, except for changing 10 to 20, because this whole plan is a comp plan for 20 years. But it's really about, like, what's the most important thing in terms of park and recreation? That's what I'm thinking is helpful for the comprehensive plan, is promoting tourism, increasing, like, that to me is not about, like, what types, but maybe what's the end use for it. So I just think that 17 and 18 could be almost one or the other. And 18 is my preference.
Where did 17 come from, the Trails Committee, or was that a Parks one?
I think it was from my I started with a template from previous communities that I've done surveys with.
I just wouldn't.
Yeah, I actually see value in.
One question that he got in there.
I see value in both of those for different reasons.
That's a good point.
And if we ever get funding back through grant programs and recreational programs, if we ever get that back after it's been cut, I think this will help us go after some interesting grant opportunities to actually be able to implement these different options. Okay, yes, Michael.
Yep, on 16, if you decide to keep it, so I can't help but think back to my software days where I would add features that I knew customers wouldn't use, but they help sell the product. And for me, the trails, for my lifestyle, I don't use them. But I love having them, I love talking about them, Sanford. When I talk real estate, I'm like, hey, you know that thing is abuts the trail system in Sanford? And like, talk it up, because if you're gonna Airbnb the property or whatever, so I think maybe you could add G. I don't use the trails. Is it 16?
Well, that was number 13. I never use Parker Trails.
I never
There you
used
go. Well, maybe consolidate 13 into 16 then.
Ah. It's only one question.
Okay, let's go back to the downtown section, and hate to bring back the two different downtowns, but I can just make a slash, downtown Sanford / Springvale.
Or Springville.
Yeah, I had how often do you visit downtown Sanford or downtown Springvale?
But not as two separate questions.
No, just one question.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Like, I work in downtown Sanford, so I would be every day of the week, but, downtown Springvale,
It's
depends on what I need.
But to Steve's point earlier, I spend most of my time in South Sanford,
Yeah.
right? So I go downtown once a week to go to the post office. But the rest of the time, I'm at the other end of town, and I can't tell you the last time I went to Springvale. But, so, I guess it just depends on,
Which
where-
part is it?
where you live, and then, kind of how you live. So, again, I guess it depends on what you want to do with this data.
Yep.
You know.
I mean, like, you're a great example right now. You just said, I never visit downtown.
Yeah, I
And then the
mean-
next question is,
Yeah, and I
what would
tried-
make you visit downtown more?
Yeah, I mean, I read it, I'm like, oh, I got the damn, getting the traffic, right? So I'm like, oh, well, shit, the Northborough post office is almost just as close. Maybe I'll go that way, and I'll go to Hannaford down there instead. So, depending on the time of day and the traffic, I'm like, oh, shit, I'll go to North Berwick. So,
But a healthy downtown, and one of the reasons we're asked these questions,
Yep.
healthy downtowns have the same economic impact as a large-scale employer
yes.
community. So what would make you come to the downtown more? What should we focus on? And that's,
traffic.
your answers would be very valuable, because you don't come into downtown because you don't have much you have to do here. But you would come into downtown if,
Right.
there's your
Well,
answer.
So again, depending on what you're trying to do with that data, do you want to know that information about those three separate areas of town? Springvale, Sanford proper downtown, and South Sanford? Or do you really just care about the downtown? If it's just truly all you're really getting that information for is downtown
Yeah.
proper, then great, leave it as is.
Because those are the walkable shopping areas, whereas the strip mall type of thing is a different type of, it's a different type of economic value.
Parking and traffic.
Downtowns tend to support small businesses where money stays within the community more than the larger businesses that are necessary but tend to be in South Sanford.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the value of this section is downtown Sanford. You could technically have value in having the two other sections and make the survey too long, though. But if you add downtown Sanford Springville, it's going to confuse the results, per se.
That's true, that's true.
And I think in a comp plan, the goals for Springville are going to be drastically different than downtown Sanford, and going to be drastically different than South Sanford. I don't want answers in here for the other sections if this is solely focused on downtown Sanford.
Fair enough.
Okay, I'll have to look into what our options are on the online, like what different layouts I can use, because I might be able to get more data without really adding a question, if we have different, just have to look at that some more.
So on 11,
11,
could
yes.
you consider adding, because you've got the more parking, right? But what I don't see here is just the traffic. Like if you're coming out of Dairy Queen and you, heaven forbid, you want to take a left, right? It's just like, okay, how do I go down the side streets to get where there's a stoplight? Because otherwise I'm risking my life trying to make that left.
Me every day.
Yeah, so that's my biggest, concern. And then, again, parking is the other one.
Anyone else? Oh, I can see who that is. Tom?
Yeah, hi, on this one, I would suggest, because I don't see it, an other category where people could put some stuff in there that isn't on the list. Because you might get some really interesting answers there.
Yep, that's
Thanks.
true. We have it in all the other questions, so might as well add that too. Yep. So I'm thinking traffic or connectivity. Okay. Thanks, Ben. Anyone else on downtown? Okay, land use and development. There's only one question in this, but well, go ahead. Weigh in, I suppose.
Do you want it to be a 10-year focus? Because that is a little bit easier to pinpoint, even though we are trying to do a 20-year comp plan.
I think it makes it sound a little bit more optimistic.
I agree. I think 10 years, I think, is actually conceivable, whereas if you ask somebody to vision over a priority that spans over 20 years, it gets a little bit too big.
Yeah, and later in the process, once we get these, we'll have more draft goals and be prioritizing them as short-term goal, medium-term goal, long-term goal, and that's where we get a little bit more of the spread on the 20 years, but for now, I think it's easier for people to conceptualize 10.
What about selecting more than one? Do you want us to be able to do that or no?
Three, is this another one for the top
Thinking
three?
about that. Would ranking them be a better way to do it?
Or just priorities, and then someone can select 2, 3, you know, even if you,
That's what I mean.
because then at some point, you'll know you have, 10 for A, you'll have 20 for B. I mean, I think,
Is that a possibility with the
I think
survey to
so,
rank
yeah,
them?
choose 3.
Because I'm reading through these, and they're all important, but certainly.
Yeah, we're asking for the
Everyone's
most.
opinion as to
I
which
think
is
choosing
more.
3 and ranking them all is basically comes out to be the same result, but ranking them all takes more time. So I think
That's a good point.
I lean towards choose 3.
Yeah.
So can I just add on that? So on 12D, 'cause, it's like, when I'm looking at this question, I'm going, yes, 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 and yes, but then I'm like, but how you develop it, right? And the zoning and the development guidelines, like, to me, I go back to It's a Wonderful Life, do you want to, what kind of city do you want, Do you want Pottersville, or what's the other one?
I would have chosen D as my answer with one choice.
Right, yeah, so it's like, we need all those things, but I want it to be pretty, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to go in and see Pottersville. I want to see something that's, the facades are all looking nice, there's landscaping, you go into like downtown Kennebunk, there's flowers and flags, and it's
Every
pretty,
building has a
and-
shop or a restaurant.
Yeah, and it's pretty, it's like, you feel proud to be there because you're like, wow, this is just a gorgeous place to be. And it has the grocery stores I need, it has Walmart, it has Lowe's, but it's got the smaller businesses as well. It's like the whole kit and caboodle.
It's Bedford Falls.
Bedford Falls, yes, thank you, yes.
What is Bedford Falls?
It's true, one of the things that bothers me the most about what happens now is, there's an empty lot and there's no need to make it fit into that old existing neighborhood. Even just the simplicity of filling a lot.
Yeah.
They stick a lot of people just stick the most basic thing there. I mean, Habitat for Humanity, for all the good they do, they put houses in neighborhoods that don't fit.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, they don't fit. And that is not a great trend to continue if we're going to have what we want our community to look like. We need to start saying, okay, I know it's simple to build a little ranch there, but this is a neighborhood of little New Englanders, so you need to come and have something that looks a little bit more like it fits.
And then one of the things Mike and I were talking about earlier, so we bought a place in Florida, and the town is a city that we bought a place in. There are code rules that makes it feel like you're in an HOA, right? But we're not in an HOA. We're just regular street like most people. But you can't park a trailer in the front yard, and you can't, if you don't mow your grass, well, the town's going to mow it for you, and guess what? They're going to tack it onto your tax bill at the end of the year. So so they're doing.
It works.
It works.
Well, but let's, to keep this process in focus, I think we're talking about strategic planning, we're talking about vision. So we're talking about setting the goal, setting the target. How we hit that target is later.
Okay.
You know, like, if we're going to say that what we're looking to do is set the goal of, promoting or retaining a desired community character, then that is a directive to the council, to staff, to leadership, and then, we figure out how to hit that target later on through policy or through whatever, through incentivization, however we choose to do it.
Yep, agreed, especially if it comes out as the top one, then we know to kind of bear down on that and flush it out some more with different strategies and goals. Okay, great. So I think we're good with that one. The next section is kind of municipal operations, infrastructure, and just how, in general, people feel that they have a say in the process.
What do you mean by challenge? Frustration?
Well, these clearly need an other as well. I'll just throw that because I agree with Michelle, that's could be very broad, and I think we need to open that up to other interpretations of what would constitute a challenge. So the other category, the write-in, I think would be important for 20 and 21.
No, people are gonna hear the word challenge, and they're gonna, it's gonna be there's not enough money, or there's not enough, there's just gonna be something that I don't know what's in their head when they're answering this question. So what are we trying to get out of it? And is there a different word than challenge that we should be using? Adding other is great, because we've added others to other ones.
Yeah, maybe the first question is more, which issue do you think Sanford should focus on first?
Okay.
Are these all, do we agree these are, I mean, I don't know if they're all issues, but. Which of these issues is a priority?
Choose 2 or something? Choose 3?
I think this one, though, you really want to know what the one is.
Yes.
I think so. I mean,
Go ahead, what is it?
oh, maintenance?
I think it's easier for people to choose like 3.
Oh.
But at first I want to sit here and say, do the work and make a decision, darn it, right? But I think it's easier to choose the 3, and when you score these, when it comes in, the priorities will come out. You're choosing the top 3. This, even if versus 1, the priority will still come out. When people are listing the same thing, the same 1, 2, or 3 over and over and over, the priority will come out.
Should have had H, how to get oceanfront property. That's a challenge priority. To
Challenge for the future.
Embrace climate change, take the dam out, let them come up the river, it's all, hey.
Tom on Zoom?
Yeah, I struggled with kind of what we were trying to get from this question. So, but I think the discussion that had just taken place there kind of is the same thing I was thinking of. It didn't seem like the right question or what we were trying to achieve by asking the question. Are we just rating people's priority on these, or the quality of each of these, or both? Or it was just a little confusing to me when I read it.
Yep, I agree. I think that both of these questions relate to the city's budget and the services that the city actually has their hands in versus just, yes, we can change the zoning that promotes a different kind of housing, but like I said, we're not building the housing. We are approving the applications. We are maintaining public properties. We are providing public safety. So sometimes this question is listed as how satisfied are you with each of these? And I could change it to that kind of format and let people rank how satisfied they are with each of them. and then kind of ask in the future what they think is the thing that needs to be addressed the most.
Yeah, I think if it's a future thing, then that makes sense. I'm just trying to kind of tie it back to the process in terms of the comp plan. If it's just a quality assurance survey, that's, I think, more like here and now and short term, but if somehow to make the question or questions a little bit more clear that we're looking to the future and maybe what should the city focus on more or prioritize, like we said before, I guess our other said, maybe Steve.
Referring what to me about privatization? Is that what he said? What to privatize?
Prioritize what, Steve?
Prioritize, I think.
Oh, prioritize.
Okay.
Prioritize, yeah, not privatize.
I'm like, we're prioritizing.
Mark?
Maybe we should-
Yep.
I understand the answers about, I'm trying to figure out what the action item is for the one for city fiscal and taxes. I mean, I understand the action items for traffic and for maintaining municipal properties. I don't understand what the action is if somebody says their biggest challenge is city taxes.
You know, I pulled this from another community, and I can't remember what the issue was there, but that was a very specific one that they had wanted in there. I think that this is, I'm open to the feedback that we want to get out of this survey.
So
People want to say, if it's issues instead of challenge, what's the greatest issue right now? And we want to write in there specifically the high taxes. And if someone says yes, that's an issue, then we know they think the taxes are high. And if they don't click that as the thing that needs to be changed, then they're okay with their current tax rate.
I've lived in many different communities, and every place I've ever lived, everybody thinks they pay too much in taxes. So if they give you the feedback that they're frustrated with their taxes, there's nothing you're going to do from a comprehensive strategic plan standpoint to address that, in my opinion.
Yep.
So this might be a further question then for Ben, right, the city assessor. I had a good conversation when he first came into the job, and he talked about the balance of, property value versus the tax rate that the city council decides on. And it's in the end, we still have a budget of X million dollars, but there are levers depending on how property may or may not be valued. So it might be helpful to ask him how best to word that, but I think.
Are we going to strike that as one of the answer options? I feel like this community had an issue with potential bankruptcy issues, so that's where I had pulled it from. We don't have that issue.
Oh, not
here.
us, because
Not
that's
us.
never been close, no.
Right.
No.
So
Careful what you say, Aaron, and qualify it, because Sanford's always been a good fiscal manager.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm comfortable striking that as an option from both sections, really. But I'm wondering if there's something else that we want to know, what we're spending the city budget on.
I personally don't want it removed.
Okay.
Because for me, it is actually a deciding fact of whether I move or not. Because the tax bill in the community here versus what I pay in the community I'm looking at, it's a third of Sanford's tax bill for the same exact house. And so that's a financial choice I have to make, not.
And it's a service choice, and you
It
have
is.
to.
It is.
services that
So-
you
so
get with
that-
it.
That's where I was gonna go with that is, it may be a problem to people, but the solution, there's thousands of different ways to come at a solution with lowering taxes. You increase revenues from, bigger businesses.
Perhaps.
You spend less. I mean, there's a million other ways to solve it. But I think removing that, it gives people the opportunity to say that taxes are too.
So people have largely misunderstood, property taxes are extremely unfair. It's not a great form of taxation because, one of the reasons we have sprawl is because rural communities, you go out there, you don't get anything for services. You basically suck off the teat of the larger communities and pay lower taxes. So it's, I understand why people move out, but they shouldn't be allowed to so easily get lower taxes. There should be a better way. The state of Maine has tried to spread out the property tax burden, because larger communities bear a larger burden in general of services. And so so when anybody ever answers that, their favorite thing is to say, well, look what they pay in Acton and Shapley. And I'm like, well, look what they pay in Biddeford and South Portland. And those are the communities you need to compare Sanford to.
Yeah.
And we actually do very well, especially given that our property total assessed value is much lower than those other places. We do a very good job. And we have good quality services. That being said, the real negative for all large communities is that people keep doing that. It's like good people keep doing that. I'm just going to move out here and get lower taxes. If we could only level that out, people would make choices differently than taxes. It's sad that they do make choices for taxes because it's not a great way to make choice.
And it's tough because, it is probably my biggest, like a new trail is not going to make me stay. You're weighing in the benefits of the services and the taxes. It becomes an affordability thing for me.
Yeah, but what can we do to change it? Cut the fire department? Because that's how big a cut you need to do. Fire department, stop plowing roads as much as we do, or that's how big the cuts have to be.
Do a comprehensive property valuation, because newer houses and properties are maybe a higher maybe a higher value than somebody who hasn't been reevaluated for 20 or 30 years. That was one of the things that Ben was explaining to me, is that Sanford has an opportunity to go and look at property values, which would then, again, the balance, reduce the tax rate and levelize for old versus new homes. That's just one of the things, and I am in favor of keeping this on.
Right. I'd be very careful because Sanford has always, I'm not saying a reval wouldn't do something, but the last little reval we didn't show a vast difference because our assessor had a way of adjusting based on market sales on a consistent basis, the prior assessor. And I know Ben disagreed with it. Yes. However, I actually don't think you're going to see a massive change in a reval.
So my question is.
If you look at the valuations online, I would say.
My question is,
Sure.
is this information of any value to us in the comp plan process? If people are upset about high taxes, is that valuable information for us to have in this process? It's very valuable information.
Well, it's how much do you spend on improvements?
What I'm trying to get out of this is the value for the taxes. So when I lived in a condo here, first year working here, looking for a house. I was striking out, wasn't finding what I wanted because I wanted the big house on the hill with no neighbors and all that kind of stuff. Is it here? Very limited supply. None of it was for sale at that time. So, all right. So there's all of that. But so I started looking in Alfred for a short period of time. What did I find out? The same house in Alfred, this lower tax rate. Everybody focuses on the mill rate. You can focus on the mill rate all day long. That doesn't equate to your tax bill. Right? So when I started doing the true comparison of the little bit lower taxes that I would have paid in Alfred, but I was going to pay more for that same house in Alfred at that time, right? And then I started comparing, okay, here's what I'm paying for taxes, here's what I'm getting for services. I have no curbside collection for my MSW or recyclables. No, you got to pay for that separately or take your own stuff to the transfer station. Volunteer EMS, basic level, so when what hits the fan and I make an ambulance call, there's a time in response and there's a level of professionalism that comes with that. Volunteer fire department at the time, yeah, okay. And you just kept piling down the list, right? Now I get a better value from my tax dollar here in Sanford because I get the full level of services. No police department, right? Comes from the state police, the sheriff, if they're in that district. So I balanced all of that out. So what I was trying to get out of this is a way to word this about, as far as the priorities, the value for what they're getting out of the service. Taxes, right? So I'm trying to get the value out of this, because I agree with the gentleman spoke, nobody pays too little in taxes, nobody.
Value for city services.
Well, again, it comes to the point I made before. I mean, if we get to answer your question, I think if we get a ton of feedback that people feel like they're paying too high of taxes, that then raises the question of, okay, that's the feedback. What are the action items? And I think we as staff, if we look at municipal services and decide we're actually providing great value when you compare what we're doing on the services, then I think it leads to I think it's up to us to communicate that to the community and say we've got that feedback, but we need to also communicate better those services, but we're not taking action to delete the fire department or anything like that, you know.
That's what people think that's why I say that. It's like, that's how massive the change would have to be to match a tiny town. You please just compare us to the bigger towns. And that's usually my MO when I just don't go to Acton Shapley, go to Biddeford, Saco. South
Another
Portland.
option to lower taxes would be to attract more residents.
Large businesses, yeah.
More businesses, more residents. So if that comes up as the top option here, then we have policy actions to follow up with.
Yeah.
Lee?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, as a way to address this discussion about taxes, is maybe introduce the idea, are there services that you'd be willing to pay a user fee for? Or are there, I mean, I think we started to touch on the idea of privatization, and I was thinking of our trash and recycling, how that's, you know, we've introduced a kind of a user fee concept there. And if there are other areas of municipal services, I don't know which they are, but are there other areas where we could take that approach? And would people be willing to pay a user fee to reduce their taxes?
I thought about adding trash as one of the city services, but I feel like we've handled that. And people are not always informed. I know. Okay.
We need to stay focused. Anytime people get mad, they go, orange bags.
Yeah.
No. In fact, the state of Maine's aren't they looking at potentially mandating it statewide? Some sort of,
Yeah.
Pay as you throw.
Because people aren't recycling like they should.
Right.
They're just trying to get away with it in other ways, so.
But are there, I mean, are there other areas of municipal services that user fees have been, tried?
I think maybe what would be more realistic would be to implement a fee in lieu program for new development. So if something comes up as a priority, that a development, let's say, is going to be too far away from let's make it a really expensive cost, like too far away from the fire station, that there could be a large fee for that development that supports a substation. Supports,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So that would be, instead of charging the residents.
We could start turning roads back to neighborhoods, and they could plow and maintain them themselves.
Maura wants to hand out shovels with the tax bill and let everyone shovel their own roads. That's an option.
It's just it's hard. Some of the services the municipality provides are so big.
They're so big, right? That's part of the benefit of being in a city. Yes, Steve.
So you're going down a rabbit hole that you have no control over. So we're a political subdivision of the state. We only get to do what the state allows us to do. So all of these issues you're talking about, the ability to charge a fee, create a special assessment district, put an impact fee on, it's all set by the state, right? We don't have flexibility in it. The regionalization of MSW and the pay-as-you-throw system is one of the few pieces that we have. We can charge an equitable fee for the use. So several other things that have been said in here. You talk about the diversification of the tax base. I've formed a statewide tax reform committee that we're going to work on for the next 2 years. So there's a misconception, you bring in more industry, your taxes are automatically going to go down. Go down some, but not by as much as you think. So Scarborough is a prime example of that. Tom Hall, the longtime manager there, he did an incredible presentation on the wealth growth in the town of Scarborough.
Which is extreme.
So they were small, more rural, agriculturally type, and then that coastal development just explodes, right? So we showed the tax bill that was being paid on the average home and stuff like that over a period of time as that growth came in. What happens in the state of Maine? When you get new growth, the state of Maine says, you have a greater ability to pay, so state revenue sharing goes down, school funding goes down, your county tax goes up. All of these things start to shift. So where you were getting some benefit from broad-based taxes, non-property tax pieces, that were being brought back into your community, like Sanford does as a municipal service center, there were some offsets there. Then all of a sudden you're shifting to a Scarborough or Cape Elizabeth. They are 100% dependent upon the property tax. They get $0 under EPS. They get $0 under revenue sharing. They've got all this incredible amount of taxable base and wealth, and their tax
Essentially New
bills
Hampshire.
are insane, right? The tax bills are high. Property values are high, tax bills are high, right? So it all goes to, it's my long-winded way of saying, the state of Maine needs to rethink how it taxes at all levels, because making a municipality solely dependent just on bricks and mortar property taxation, that's old, it's an antiquated ad valorem system of taxation. We don't get the benefits for working our backside off and getting major industries in here and such into that, and all of the income and corporate tax and everything goes to the benefits of the state of Maine, and we barely get 5% of that back under a distribution formula that's based upon the tax burden in that community.
The best example is marijuana. Everybody's like, you're going to make bank on marijuana. No. We could get a few fees for Jamie to go check it every year, or whoever goes down and check it, and then they get all the benefit of the taxes that we get really nothing, some property taxes. And
So it's a very big rabbit hole to go down to, and it's a complex formulation, so wish me well.
He's actually doing a tax, making yet another attempt, but the state doesn't want to let go of any of its taxation authority. So, but you're trying again. Congratulations.
Yeah. One more shot at it. So.
One of the things they want to try to do, which is interesting, is because we have so many snowbirds now and so many people buying homes that don't live here, is to try to get, like Massachusetts, you have a commercial tax rate and a residential tax rate. Well, what if you had a tax rate for a true resident who's paying all the other incomes and stuff, and then for snowbirds who are claiming Florida as a resident, or people who are buying investment homes, they would have to pay a different tax rate on that property.
Yeah, I think that would be.
It'd be interesting, but they have to get it through the state.
Or if it's an investment property, they don't live in that apartment building, it's got 18 units.
Exactly.
Shit out of them.
Yeah.
I was in Wells, I was beachfront, on the ocean. I was paying 12 grand, and I'm like, this is a deal. I was in Wells, and, my taxes should have been twice that. I was making 13,500 a week renting my place out. What was that town thinking?
It's Wells, what could you say?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's foolish.
really.
So,
Okay, great. That was great conversation. I will circle back on infrastructure and services. Those are meant to help kind of like Public Works and our staff side. In 22, I see the text edit there. Sorry about that. And that's just in general how people are feeling, whether or not they're kind of comfortable with the public process and feel like they are accessible. The background questions, I usually have a little disclaimer underneath them of like, these just help us get to know, make sure we have reached a wide audience. Every question, including these ones, are optional. So if anyone feels uncomfortable with that, they can just skip these and then they're done. And that is the community survey. So I'm gonna take all of your comments into consideration and draft that up and send you a link to take it and send it. Let's see. Next up, so we'll be planning those opportunities to kind of reach out to the community and push out the survey and the mapping exercise, like I said, with the school, sporting events, any kind of downtown event that we might have in the near future. We'll be talking about that. And I do want to hear from you all what you'd like to discuss at the next meeting. If you feel like there's a certain topic we haven't covered yet, just to make sure that I am answering everyone's questions. The next kind of overall step for us would be to draft goals for the plan. But if there's some area that you want more information on first, we can. Like I had planned to do some sort of agricultural farmland presentation. I don't know if we need that or if we all agree it's important. And I can utilize some other existing state data the main farmland trust just did a whole plan themselves, and I can pull out those kind of overarching goals.
So, Aaron, you mentioned earlier that you have other data that you know will help the city. Is that something that you could share with us so that?
Oh, sure.
You know, again, just might be helpful to us to understand what some of those other topics might cover.
Okay.
And how that might help the city?
Sure, I can give, I'll make a folder of resources for statewide plans that have been done.
When will we have the RKG report back as far as their recommendations for capacities and things of that nature?
I don't know that answer.
Yeah, I'd like to get that finalized as a next step, if it's possible.
Then, before we start talking about our goals, right, for the comp plan, should we have another dialogue, or a dialogue around land use patterns, current land use patterns, what you're seeing for changes? You know, like Jamie's got a long litany of, you know, things that we need to be addressed. We know the RD zones going away and stuff like that, but just a kind of an overview of land use patterns and stuff and definitions, and before we start throwing out goals. Yes, no?
We can. I don't know if everyone's interested in that.
Well, as you're trying to set your goals, which are going to drive future land use patterns in zoning, right?
That's
Or
one
you
thing.
set goals and then you're establishing those land use patterns in zoning. I don't know, for me, if I didn't have a strong understanding of what those land use patterns are and zoning definitions and such, it would be hard for me to throw the goals out there, but.
Okay. Anyone else?
Ideas? I don't know if this is appropriate fit, but I'm concerned about traffic in Sanford long-term, not just 20 years, but 40 years out. I spend a lot of time in Wells, I live in other cities, and I see these high-rises going up, big apartment buildings, and, you know, what's the 40-year plan? When are we going to turn Main Street into a one-way street and do something with one of the other streets somewhere? Like, I'm sure, hopefully Matt will pipe in on this, but I feel like Main Street's not going to be sustainable forever. And I'd like to know, I think we need to have a master plan now for when, well before the street can't handle the traffic pattern.
Okay, yep, sounds good. Traffic?
So is that really, for me, that's a conversation around right sizing, right? We talk about future growth, development, how much is too much before you get into impact fees and all that sort of deal. What's our capacity for the future, and how do we right size that going forward and not outstrip our capacities, I guess?
Yeah, and one way on Main Street isn't necessarily a capacity thing. That would lead to many other issues.
We'll just have to get some eminent domain land and build a perimeter road then, right, Steve? Yeah, sure. Let's build some more bridges. Mark?
Two things. On that specific comment, coming from the West St. Louis region of my most recent residence, you know, as they built higher capacity highways west of St. Louis, the growth exploded into the rural areas where it was cheaper and taxes were less. The housing stock was brand new. I could buy a house for $130,000. Taxes might be $1,600 a year, but I have to drive, you know, an extra 20 minutes. But once they put in the highways, you know, people are driving 75, 80 miles an hour, and they could go a lot farther out in that same 20 to 30 minutes. So it's certainly not a panacea for this specific town to increase traffic throughput. Beyond that, just back to the survey thing for a minute. While the survey that we just talked about this evening was incredibly helpful for people who live and work in Sanford, is there a survey that we should be targeting specifically to business owners if so much of the comprehensive plan is around how to attract and grow businesses in Sanford, Springvale? Should we be having a dialogue specifically with business owners to see what their needs are, or where they see the constraints on growing their businesses in the town are?
That's a good question. We did have, as part of the RKG study, a group of, I think there were 12 different business owners that were represented as a stakeholder, so it was less of a survey and more of a sit-down. Any kind of challenges with developing in Sanford and attracting workplace, and so that's where a lot of that feedback came from. It's possible that we have an action item in the comp plan as far as attracting new businesses, and part of that would be survey the current businesses, survey future businesses, establish a strategy for reaching out to regional companies that don't have a presence in Sanford yet. There's a lot of different strategies that can come out of the comp plan. It's not just land use and zoning. It's how we spend our money. It's how we drive policy. It's a directive to many of the different staff members that are here.
To that point, though, I will say, and I encourage everybody to do this, and this survey is obviously available to anyone who can take it. I plan on definitely sharing it. Word of mouth is one of the best ways, right? Tell people you know. There are a lot of business owners and property owners who are trying to attract businesses to develop on their property that are very interested in this process. And if they can't be here for these meetings or future meetings, they're certainly going to get an email from me saying the very least you can do is fill out this survey. So hit all your friends up. The more responses we get, the better, the more robust of a community input process we have, the better plan it's going to be. And I think we as a steering committee can kind of take it upon ourselves to be responsible for making sure that we get the word out. And the audience I have at my disposal happens to be business owners and commercial landowners, and I intend to reach out to them pretty thoroughly when this does. Part of the reason why I asked Aaron, when is this going to be, the mapping exercise, when's that going to go live? Because I'd love to get the word out that people should go take part in it.
Renee?
Oh, you were asking about other topics we could discuss for the comprehensive plan, right?
Yes, yep.
So I don't know if this would be like necessarily under the purview of the comprehensive plan, or maybe if we've gone over it already. But have we looked into at all like finding ways like in the future to get people like more involved in like the decision being made, like giving their input into like how the city runs, and like participating more in like the like local government and stuff like that. Have we like looked into that at all?
I think part of the goal of a comprehensive plan is to involve as many people as possible, and that is the phase that we're in right now, trying to get people involved in the comprehensive plan. If you're talking about how to encourage like younger people to run for office, that is a great policy. I don't know that we would need to discuss strategy for that. I don't know the strategy for that really.
Yeah, I was more just talking about like this what we're doing right here with the steering committee. Is there like anything like that we're planning in the future of like how to try to reach more people to like get them involved in more stuff like this, or like is that not under the purview of the comprehensive plan?
No, that can definitely be. I think I'll try and figure out how we would be able to pull that kind of data. But for instance, like if someone says that they are under 18 in that last question area of the survey, and they're also saying, they don't feel very connected, then maybe we see that we discuss it, that we want to target the younger audience and help them feel more connected.
Yeah, because like I don't really have like any specific answers on what we should do. I was just thinking that like if this is a aspirational plan for like the future, then, you know, I know, me personally, I think it would be really cool if we saw like more people getting involved in the community over the next 20 years. So, you know, if there's anything we could think of that might lend to that, then that might be nice to include as well.
Okay, great. Yep, I'm writing it down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Oh, Lenny, go ahead.
If we do have that discussion that Steve has referenced about zoning, can we discuss maybe how zoning could be used to encourage business growth?
Business growth. Okay, great. Any other last questions? Excellent. Thank you all for your participation. I really appreciate the input.